We just came from the Rayburn building in 2237, and we had a hearing on HR 490, the Heartbeat Protection Act. And it is a piece of legislation that protects a baby from the moment that a heartbeat can be detected, the baby is protected. And we have exceptions in there for the life of the mother, and I think it's very well defined within the bill itself. But we have legislation also that enjoys very strong support across the country, and according to polling, we have a 69% support across Democrats, Independents, and Republicans that support the protecting a baby from the moment that a heartbeat can be detected. We had excellent witnesses there today who made a good, strong case, I believe, and this is a step along the way. When I think about what we're about here and what it means, I look back on the 60 million babies that have been aborted since 1973 in Roe versus Wade. And then I think, the first 20 or 24 years of that, there were babies that would have been born also to those who were aborted. And when you do the math and take that apart, just the back of the envelope calculation, roughly if each one of those girls that were aborted had 3 babies each, you'd have another 60 million babies. So we're in the area of not 60 million, we're in the area of over 100 million and maybe 120 million babies that were missing in this country due to abortion. And the question that presented itself before this committee several times today is this. First thing, I think we have a nearly universal consensus in America, and wherever you sit on the political spectrum, that human life is sacred. Now, I say human life is sacred in all of its forms, and there were some people who made a case, not a very strong one, that there should be exceptions, and one of the Democrats was seeking to assert that if a baby would be born as a paraplegic, wouldn't you abort that baby? And I'm sitting there thinking, I would never execute a paraplegic. Just last weekend, Louis Gohmert and I went pheasant hunting with Jack Zimmerman, who lost both of his legs at the hip in an IED over Afghanistan, and he's out there in a track chair. He's living and loving life. I would never abort someone just because they were physically handicapped. But those are the weakness of the arguments that came on the other side. Ours, I think, are strong, and they're moral, and they are sound. And the cases before the committee now, I think our arguments have held up well. We'll have to look forward to the next step along the way, which I hope is a markup. We don't have a commitment on that yet, but the results of this hearing, I think, help us that way. So I'd like to first recognize the former chairman of the Constitution Subcommittee, who has done a tremendous amount of work on life in this Congress, and one who is building a legacy here, and that's Trent Franks from Arizona.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate so much all of you coming here today, and I especially appreciate the people surrounding this podium. I think sometimes it's bewildering to me when we have a committee hearing on a bill of this magnitude, and the main argument is that this is something that we really shouldn't be messing with, that it's a non-issue, that it's somehow not important, and they diminish it every way they can to the essence of the issue itself. And yet, we should be reminded that this bill really is about who we are as a human family and how we treat the most innocent among us. And it's also about who we are as Americans. This notion that we still hold truths to be self-evident, that all of us are created and endowed by our Creator with the unalienable right to live. I mean, that's as basic to America as you can possibly get. It even goes on to say that the whole purpose of government is to secure these basic rights. And I'm always amazed somehow that we miss that part of it. And I sometimes want to ask myself the key questions, do the words of the Declaration of Independence, do they still hold sway among Americans? I believe they do. And the real question about this whole issue, ladies and gentlemen, and it's one that we can't seem to get an answer from our opponents on the left, is does abortion take the life of a child? If it doesn't, a lot of us I'm ready to quit talking about it. I don't know about all of you. But if it didn't take the life of a child, it wouldn't be an issue. But because it does, and I've said it so many times and it's hard to keep saying, but because abortion takes the life of a child, and because every fourth little baby in America is a victim of it, then those of us standing here under the sunlight of freedom and in the front of the seat of freedom of the whole world are living in the midst of the greatest human genocide in the history of humanity. And if that isn't important, then I am deceived. And I would just pray that somehow all of us would ask ourselves the question, are these little babies, and is what we're doing to them humane, and are they really God's children? If we answer those clearly in our hearts, the answers will become clear, and I think that there's a chance for America to change directions in a significant way. I said today in the committee that I believe that America's eyes are beginning to open and the winds of change are beginning to blow. And I'm so grateful to all the people here, to Steve King, the sponsor of this bill. By the grace of God, we're going to somehow remind America of its own beating heart. And I thank all of you for being here.
Thank you, Trent. Another stellar member of the Judiciary Committee is the ever tenacious Louis Gomer of Texas.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Well, thank you, Chairman King. It was a real pleasure to be at the hearing today. And one of the issues that came up was we're talking about the liberty of women. And as the husband of a woman for 39 plus years and the father of 3 incredible daughters, I want to preserve the liberty of women. And I think about China and how many women were aborted because they were women. Those unborn women had a right to live. But adults decided that since they were women, they were female, they shouldn't be given, not only not given liberty, but not even allowed to live because of their gender. And we hear reports that some people, when they find out the gender of their child, may be a girl, even in the United States, would want their child and have wanted and had their child aborted. This is not an issue of life of the mother, because the doctors are always charged with preserving life. And whatever life has the best chance of living, you do everything you can to preserve it, whether it's the mother or the child. So that's really not an issue. Some brought up the issue of rape and incest. Well, we don't even have to get into that argument, regardless about how anyone feels, because the heartbeat bill says when the heartbeat is detected, in essence, then the life must be protected. So there are 6 to 8 weeks, we're told, before the heartbeat is detected. So even if you were a proponent of abortion after rape or incest, it still is not preventing that. And I'm not going to get into a debate on that because it doesn't apply on this bill. The time is there. So that makes it clear, even for those who say, I can't support any pro-life bill that doesn't make an exception for rape or incest, well, you can still support this bill. This is about life, and you can't have liberty without life. And I'm just grateful to all of those. Janet, everyone that has been out here, appreciate the witness today. The witnesses were just superb. Our friend Star Parker, I'm sorry she was insulted. I've known Star for many years, just as I've known virtually every member of the committee for years. And there is nobody on our committee, and my apologies, but I don't believe there's anybody on our committee that shares the level of wisdom and intelligence of Star Parker. And so she certainly did not deserve any kind of insult. She's an amazing woman, and it's those are that have pushed this far. So thank you for all you've done. It's an honor to stand with you.
Thank you, Louis. Next member of the Judiciary Committee out of Louisiana, Mike Johnson. Where'd you go, Mike? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. King. It was a remarkable moment. I'm not sure if everyone here with us at the press conference was in the hearing, but we saw an ultrasound live to tape with a young mother sitting there, and we saw the unborn child, baby Lincoln, he's named, it was a remarkable moment. It might have been a historic moment in the Congress. I'm new here, but people ask, why do you care so much about this issue? Why would you sign on so early to be a co-sponsor of the heartbeat bill? And the way I explain it is in very simple terms to the people back home and the people around the country. I like to quote G.K. Chesterton. He was a British philosopher, but he said, America is the only nation in the world that's founded upon a creed. And what's our creed? It's what Congressman Franks mentioned. It's the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. It's a self-evident truth that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those are the rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Why is that our creed? Why did the founders list life first? They listed it because they understood that we are made in the image of a holy God, our Creator, and that He's the one that gives us our rights, not the government. Our rights are inalienable, and the right to life is the first and most fundamental of all those rights. The reason that we recognize that is because we understand, since we're made in the image of God, our value and the value of every single person is inestimable. It's not related in any way to our race or socioeconomic status, where we come from, where we went to school, or what we do for a living. Our value is inherent in who we are as a human being. And that's what we recognize with the heartbeat bill. We're going to save a lot of lives when this changes the law in this country. And I'm proud to stand here with these great warriors for the cause of life, for the vision of the founding fathers, and for the creed of our great nation, the greatest nation in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Now, a doctor who does know what this is all about, Dr. Andy Harris.
Thank you, Mr. King. You know, I'm an anesthesiologist by trade, and it's interesting because I will go and see a patient preoperatively, and I'll tell them, I put electrocardiograph leads on and to measure your heartbeat. I have yet to have a patient ask me, well, gee, why do you put them on? Because everyone knows when there's a heartbeat, there's a human life.
Yes.
When the heartbeat ends, the human life ends. The corollary to that is when the heartbeat begins. Everybody appreciates, although a human life starts early, that there's a human life there. And this human life is not a blob of tissue. It's not chattel. It's a human life. This bill makes that self-evident to anyone who understands. That's why a vast majority of Americans will agree with us that the heartbeat indicates a human life is there. And as Americans, we understand intrinsically that human life deserves protection. That's the beauty of this bill. That's why I strongly support this bill and its passage. Thank you.
You're here.
And the gentleman who offered the prayer this morning, Jody Heiss.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and it is, as has already been stated, an incredible honor to stand here with these warriors, all of whom understand the sanctity of life. And life is not something to be trivialized or to played with. And we are grateful to Steve King for sponsoring this bill, for Janet and a host of others. It's been a collaborative effort to stand for life, and none of us up here are ashamed to stand for life. In fact, we are honored to stand for it, and we will continue to stand as long as we possibly can. As has already been stated, this is an inalienable right. We understand that life itself is a gift of God. It is not something granted by government or any institution. It is a God thing. And our task, among other things, is to guard and to defend, protect those inalienable rights, without which we understand if there is no right to life, there is no liberty. There is no ability to pursue happiness. Right. This is the foundational principle of everything else that we as Americans stand for. And so it is just a tremendous honor to be a part of the WHIP team. We now have in the ballpark of 170 co-sponsors and continuing to increase that number. And we are going to push and push and push until we get a vote on the floor and move this bill forward. And again, it's just an incredible honor to stand here and to support this bill, and I thank you for being here as well.
You're here.
Thank you, Jody. And the second doctor in the ranks here out of Louisiana, Ralph Abram.
Thank you. The moral and ethical arguments for this bill are strong. I support them with every breath in my body. But as Dr. Harris mentioned, as physicians, we have been at the bedside and been very honored when the patient has taken literally their last breath. And you put the stethoscope on their heart and you hear the last heartbeat and you look at the clock, and that is the time of death, is when the heart stops beating. So medically, wouldn't it make sense? That's when life starts, when the heart starts beating. So I think we've got it from all points of view, moral, ethical, and now medical. So this is a great bill. I'm proud to be a small part of it, and we certainly wanted to see it come to fruition and pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. And now I'd like to introduce the gentleman who speaks with the clarity of the morality of the state of Oklahoma, Steve Russell.
I appreciate Steve King's leadership on this issue. For me, these are not academic issues. 3 of my 5 children are adopted. The notion that there are unwanted children, let's find out. Give them a chance. There's going to be people out there that will love them, that will accept them, and will take them. We can carve up a child and call it a choice. We can cover acts of barbarity with the veneer of civility. But what we can never do is escape our accountability before a mighty God. What this bill does, and those that stand with us here today, is gives us a chance to stop one of the most horrific things that we as the United States have ever endeavored in. And I'm proud to stand with them, and now we need to stand for life. Thank you.
Here, here. Well done.
Thank you, Steve Russell. I want to thank all the members. We've just been informed that they've called votes a few minutes ago. And the minutes that I have, I'll stay here as long as I can. But I want to hand the balance of this press conference over to Janet Porter. But I want to say a couple words about her first. That I don't know of a driving personality force that pushes any harder than Janet Porter does, and I've known her for a lot of years. And on this, the idea was pushed into the state of Ohio, where Janet's been involved in the pro-life movement for years, back to the partial birth abortion effort, and she understands the legality of this. She understands the political dynamics of it, and it has been Janet's hard work that's made a lot of this possible. And so please welcome Janet Porter, Faith to Action.
Here, here. Here, here. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Congressman, for taking the lead. I want to thank this distinguished group of legislators. This is the most supported pro-life bill in Congress. 170 legislators have put their names on top of this bill. But it's also the scientific solution to abortion upon which America can agree. It did not come out sufficiently in the testimony, but the poll that was done by the respected pollster George Barna this year showed that 7 out of 10 in America favor the heartbeat bill becoming law. That's 86% of Republicans, 61% of independents, and yes, even a Democrat majority by 55%. This is the scientific solution to abortion upon which America can agree. I want to thank also a man who's not here today. He's speaking in Yale, but he is the fully exonerated former Majority Leader Tom DeLay, and I just can't have a press conference about the heartbeat bill without saying a special thanks to him as well. We would not be in this place if he had not come and lent his voice to the voiceless. We also have to honor those to whom honor is due, and one is a very dear friend of mine. I may have been involved in introducing the nation's first heartbeat bill in Ohio back in 2011, but it was Senator Jason Rapert who got the job done first. He is the senator, the sponsor of the heartbeat bill in Arkansas, which became the heartbeat law, and we welcome one of the heartbeat heroes who received the coin today. We welcome Senator Rapert.
Well, I want to thank Janet Porter and everyone that has come out today to speak for life. I didn't know when I got into the state legislature that the pro-life issue would become a dominant issue in my career. I simply was like many of you. I believe that when there is a heartbeat, there is life. I ran across some legislation from Janet Porter and those in Ohio that drafted it, and we filed that bill in the state of Arkansas. We passed that bill with an overwhelming supermajority in our legislature, And a large majority, over 60% of the people in the state of Arkansas said, Representative King, that a heartbeat should be protected from the moment of detection. And so your bill, sir, which was the original starting point for our bill, is exactly what the people of Arkansas stood for. From that point forward, I want to say here that I thank each of these members of Congress, because I believe that today you are actually at the starting or the beginning of the end of abortion in America as we know it. I believe that what you do here today will not be soon forgotten, and it will result in a more common sense protection for little babies in our country. As I close my remarks, I will tell you that I stand here on behalf of 3 constituencies. I'm one of 7,383 state legislators in this country that have passed pro-life laws in a majority of our states, only to see those laws struck down by a federal judiciary who believes that they know better than the people's voice, which is the legislative bodies of this country. I stand here and throw my support behind Congress and ask this national legislative body to once and for all protect the lives of unborn babies. I also speak out for those 60 million little babies that have been taken in our country, and to tell you, what kind of country are we when we protect dogs and cats to a greater degree than we do unborn human beings? We must do better. We are better than this. And last, I say this, and to Representative King and all of you that stand here, a few months ago, as I was leaving a restaurant in my district in Conway, Arkansas, a woman came pushing a stroller up to me. And she said, "I want to introduce you, Senator, to my little boy, Johnny. Johnny is alive because of your heartbeat bill." Yes, a federal judge struck down our ban on abortion in Arkansas, but all of the informed consent provisions that have been laid out here remained. And I was able to meet face to face little Johnny. This country should stand up for the lives of little babies just like Johnny. So I say God bless you, and I thank you, and America stands behind you, men. You're here.
For those who missed the hearing, let me tell you my favorite moment of the hearing was when the youngest to ever testify in Congress testified today. An 18-week-old baby named Lincoln, whose beating heart may be what emancipates the other children in the womb whose hearts are beating strong. And so we have with us the mom of baby Lincoln, Mackenzie Miller, if you'll come forward. Also Melanie Miller from the Ashland Pregnancy Care Center, who is not related, they're not related, but the two of them came together. We were up to the wee hours to make sure we had the best images of baby Lincoln, and now the world knows that we're not talking about a glob of tissue. We've talked for so long, they've pretended that abortion doesn't stop a beating heart. But isn't it interesting now? Everyone is recognizing, yes, abortion stops a beating heart, but with the heartbeat bill, a beating heart will stop abortion. Lincoln, the star of the entire testimony, from my opinion, is Mom. We welcome Mackenzie.
I am so humbled and blessed to be Lincoln's mama, and okay. But I just hope that today being able to hear Lincoln's heartbeat will help pass this bill so that other moms have the same feeling that I can have, and that other innocent lives can be saved. Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, thank you. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to showcase to the nation a window into the womb when we are able to detect the heartbeat. What's really powerful about the Pregnancy Center ministry, there's 2,500 pregnancy centers that are pro-life across this nation, and the ultrasound technology is what makes the difference. 80% of moms who see their baby's heartbeat on an ultrasound will choose life. And Mandy Ross, our ultrasound sonographer, we could not do this without her. It's her training that allows us to get these detailed images, for her to be able to pick up the heartbeat and the Doppler, so there's an immediate bonding experience that happens between mom and baby. So here's Mandy Ross. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for inviting us to come out and speak upon the half of those of the voiceless. That's what we're here for. Put your hand upon your heart. Everybody, I just want you to feel your heartbeat. Now, there are those in this country that tell us that they get to choose whether or not to stop that heartbeat. Could you imagine not having a voice to say, I'm here, I'm alive, I have a heartbeat? That's what we're here today. And I just pray that today makes a big difference, that we are able to speak for those that are unable to speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That child's heartbeat really is an SOS, and it's so great that the committee and these incredible members are willing to heed that SOS, to listen, to pay attention to that baby's cry. One of the other things that came up in the hearing, you may have heard, is the usual mantra that we hear about how children who are conceived through no fault of their own, through the process of rape or incest, that we ought to sacrifice those children. We ought to kill those children for the crimes of their father. There's somebody here who thinks differently. We talk about women's rights. Well, I care very deeply for the women's rights of my friend Rebecca Kiesling. If you want to come on up, she was through no fault of her own conceived in this manner, but yet her heart beats very strong, and her life is worthy of protection. Rebecca?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very glad to be alive. I was conceived when my birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She went to 2 illegal abortions prior to Roe versus Wade, and I was almost aborted. She was pro-choice when we met and told me that if abortion had been legal, she would have aborted me. So I literally owe my birth to lawmakers, to legislators who protected me, who recognized that mine was a life worth saving, even in cases of rape. Now, one of the congressmen, I believe it was Congressman Raskin, raised the issue of in cases of rape. And, you know, I don't believe that he contemplated that there was actually someone present who he was targeting with his rhetoric. And I did have the opportunity to speak with him afterwards. And I told him my story, and it was very interesting because he said, well, I'm really glad that you exist. You know, I'm really glad that you're alive. I said, yeah, but you wouldn't have protected me. And there are children like me who are every bit as deserving of protection. And I could just say, oh, well, I got to be born, but there's others who are still yet at risk. And there should never be an exception. I want people to remember my heart beats just like everyone else's. And all of us are worthy of protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Couldn't agree with those statements more. We have someone who testified today in the committee, who we are very glad has joined us at the press conference. She gave a very, very compelling word as a former abortionist who can tell us more about what she's learned, having been up close and personal in the industry and now wanting to protect babies whose beating hearts can be heard. Dr. Kathy Altman, we're grateful for your presence. Come on up and join us. Thank you. Thank you for your courage.
Thank you, and I'm a chicken, and I didn't know I was going to do this, but I just think coming from a obviously pro-choice position, pro-abortion position, over time having done abortions, having counted body parts, it took a while, but I finally realized that I never thought that wasn't a little person. I knew it was a little person. I just thought it was the lesser of two evils. But I finally realized that we need to protect those little people. My right to convenience as a woman should not trump the right of a person to live. And that's the bottom line. And my cousin actually was born of a Bangladeshi woman who was raped by a Pakistani soldier. She survived her mother's abortion and was then rescued by Mother Teresa's nuns. She was then adopted by my aunt and uncle. I can't imagine her not being here. I have so many colleagues who had abortion been available to their mother. Had their mother not been too far along, they would have been aborted. For some reason, just because we can't see that little person, they haven't already been delivered, we don't know what they're going to become, we can totally disregard their life. And I think it's unconscionable that we passed Roe v. Wade, and I'm thankful that there's now going to be an attempt to overthrow it. Thank you. I'll say one more thing. If each and every one of you were there for an abortion and you had to count the body parts, you would outlaw it in a moment.
And yet the pro-abortion witness said that dismembering that child is humane. Humane to pull it limb from limb and legs and arms apart. It was appalling. But we've been walking the halls and talking to members. There's been a group that's stuck with us. Sorry, Walter, I just saw you now. We'll get you next. I hate not going to you first because you're so important, but I'll come to you next. But one of the groups that has been with us from the beginning, from the very beginning, has been Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles. Many of you know Phyllis Schlafly was a very dear friend of mine, the woman who stood against the Equal Rights Amendment. I reminded some of the members that when she fought against this amendment that would have brought with it abortion and the redefinition of marriage, the unraveling of the family, she did it when she had not a friend in Washington. She fought 3 presidential administrations. She fought the entire Congress, all the House, all the Senate, all the media. And she didn't have social media. There was no cell phone. There was no Rush Limbaugh. There was no fax machine. And yet she fought against that. And people suggest that when we have a Republican president, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a new Supreme Court being ushered in, that we should do something less than protect babies whose beating hearts can be heard. That's absurd. And so with that leadership in mind, Phyllis Schlafly chose as her replacement as president of Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles, a friend of mine named Ed Martin, who flew in today from St. Louis to speak to us today. We're so grateful for you making the trip, Ed, and for all you've done up to this point to get us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you very much. I had prepared some remarks to tell a quick story about how Phyllis Schlafly, the late Phyllis Schlafly, when she met with Donald Trump on March 11th, 2016, she handed him a copy of the 2012 platform at the Republican Party and said, "Will you help me make the 2016 platform conservative?" And Trump said yes. He honored his word at the convention in 2016, and the Republican Party platform is pro-life through and through. It's pro-family, it's pro-military superiority. It's the greatest. Phyllis Schlafly said it was the best platform ever. But we have to live up to it. And I think what I would have said was that the age of Donald Trump shows that the impossible is possible, just like Phyllis Schlafly taught us. Things that we didn't think even a year or two ago were possible are happening. That's happening whether it's international affairs, the economy, the cultural revolution that was so against us that seems to be turning towards our side. And on life, we need to be bold, and that's what the heartbeat bill is. But I would have said all that, but instead I want to address Congressman Steve Cohen. Congressman Cohen, at the end of the testimony today, engaged in what is the lowest form of race baiting. It's the lowest form of despicable behavior. He used what is so perfectly entitled a dog whistle for racism. He called an African-American woman who expressed her own opinions on public policy based on her own experience as a black woman who had had an abortion in her life. And he called her a word that has been used by every bigot from this man, Steve Cohen, back to the worst you can think of. He called her ignorant. And he didn't call her ignorant in a private meeting, in a heated moment. He called her in a public meeting with the cameras rolling so that the world could see in the greatest deliberative body, that United States Congress, we have men like Steve Cohen that will use a dog whistle to demean a black woman. I wait for Nancy Pelosi and the left to rise up and to handle Steve Cohen, and we should all wait for him. And when they do, when they address his bigotry, his disrespect for a human person, then we should say, while you're at it, let's talk about the life of the unborn. While you're at respecting Star Parker, who is an American leader and someone who's respected, who has an opinion, then let's talk about how we can do better for the babies and the heartbeat bill. And I hope that that will be a footnote, a very ugly footnote in this process, but something that's very important and incredible to behold. The idea, imagine if a Republican had said that to a woman, to an African American, to anyone. There would have already been massing, protestations and people gathering. And so we'll find out quickly, and I look forward to leadership on that. So congratulations to Steve King. Congratulations to these leaders for progress. Janet Porter's leadership is spectacular, and we look forward to saving babies and making America really, really pro-life again. Thank you all.
Many of you, like I, stood here and heard the president give his inaugural speech. And one of the things he said was, we're going to make America safe again. And the heartbeat bill is the first step to make America safe again. I want to introduce someone that should have been on that panel. If we had another person, you'd be on it. He is one of the co-drafters of the original heartbeat bills. I've been working with him for the last 7 years, state by state, and now here at the federal issue. We were here in January at a press conference that was a whole lot colder, but we're so very grateful, Walter Weber, for everything you've done. He's been before the Supreme Court with amicus briefs well over 100 times. He's a senior litigation counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice. I can't thank you enough. Come on up and address us if you would.
Thank you, Janet. The hearing today, one thing that struck me was that the people who were defending abortion against the heartbeat bill relied on one principal argument. They said, this is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has said that abortion is legal. And that reminded me, years ago when I was in law school, I happened to have a very distinguished veteran civil rights attorney as a professor in constitutional law. And one of the things he said really stuck with me. He said, after you've gone through these courses and these cases, I want you to hate the phrase, it's perfectly legal. Because that's a phrase that's used to cover all kinds of terrible things. And this is a classic example of that. I mean, here we've got people talking about dismemberment abortion, stopping beating hearts, kind of treatment that we would never give to animals, yet being done to innocent human beings. And the defense is it's perfectly legal. Well, the heartbeat bill is designed to give a good push to change that, because the law can change. In this case, it sure should. Thank you.
I want to thank somebody else that's been here from the beginning. Back in the early days in Ohio, when no one had ever heard what a heartbeat bill was, Rochelle Heidelbaugh also had extraordinary courage to come out and tell her painful story, having had abortions. She has been the logistics person, getting things going, to get it happening, to be a leader on the Hill these last 10 months since the bill's been introduced. My dear friend and pro-life leader, I'm very grateful for everything she's done in this movement. Rochelle Heidelbaugh.
I'm just very humbled to be here. And as a woman who had the right to a choice, I have to tell you all that it was the worst choice I ever made of my life. I pray to this day that no woman has to experience what I've experienced, and millions of other women in this country experience, the devastation and the heartache and the word abortion. It's not abortion. We're murdering our children. And I so wish the excuse of the rape and incest would go away, because those children are babies, they're children. I was the victim of a date rape, and I bought into that terrible, terrible lie. And 21 years ago today, 21 years ago, I made that terrible decision. I wish I would have chose life over death, and I'd be standing here looking at a beautiful daughter or son like Rebecca. I made a terrible decision. And laws are supposed to protect us. That's why we have laws. We need a law like the heartbeat bill that will protect our mothers and the babies. Had I heard my baby's heartbeat, it would have woke me up to what I was doing. It would have woke me up to the truth. And I know millions of women across this country would say the same thing today. So don't buy into the lie of choice. It's just not right. It's death, period. Thank you so much, and God bless you all, and God bless this country as we move in a totally different direction and respect and love the babies in the womb. We're going to make America safe again, starting in the womb. Thank you. It's
nice to see so many people wear red in support of the heartbeat bill, isn't it, really? I've got to introduce my good friend Larry Sarignano. He's with Children's First. He is a bold leader for life, and yet he's understated, but he's bold in pretty much everything he does, including how he dresses. He'll wear red pants. So if you got a guy that wears red pants, you know he's pretty much committed to the pro-life cause, and we couldn't be more grateful. Larry.
Thank you, Janet. I hate to do this, but I don't think this bill goes far enough. When we're fighting over custody of embryos, there's no denial of when life begins. There's 1 million babies in freezers around the country. There were 75,000 babies that were born last year coming out of a test tube. This bill, unlike what you heard from the opposition, doesn't go far enough. And I've been walking the halls with Janet. We've met with amazing members. It's amazing how many members have true stories, have adopted, have fostered children, have a real passionate belief in doing this. And I'm hopeful that with Donald Trump, we will make America safe again for all babies, from the moment of conception or creation, as we were reminded by the folks at Equal Forum, from the moment of creation until natural death. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the team members who has been with us in the last several months, walking the halls, getting it done. He's part of the prayer support as well. He is a good friend of mine, Jeremy Salupo from Elevate. We welcome you, Jeremy. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. I just want to say that as an observer of the hearing today, what struck me the most was that the advancements in science and technology have pretty much rendered our current abortion laws as primitive and outdated. Science and technology and its advancements are with us. We have better markers, we have better equipment, we have better indicators now. So to fight against the heartbeat bill is to fight against the advancements in science and technology, and that was very evident at the hearing today, especially as we saw the ultrasound. Thank you.
You know, we need to use the freedom that we have. We need to keep the republic. That's the name of a group that our last speaker represents. Lisa Panett and her beautiful daughter Bella made the trip from Missouri by car because they want to keep hearts beating, and we are very grateful. We'll take your questions after she's through. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi. This is my daughter Bella, and at 16 weeks I was told to abort her. The universal indicator that we now look to in the life debate is the heartbeat, and my daughter stands here today with her beating heart, even though I was told that her chance for survival was 0%. Please stand up for these babies that cannot speak for themselves and preserve life, starting at the heartbeat. Thank you.
We'll go ahead, and we've got just a short period of time. We have time for questions, Sarah? We got a minute or two for questions. Hang on a second. Anybody else from a news agency? We have 1 minute? All right, you have one question. Rewire is a pro-abortion agency, but go ahead.
It's not. It's actually a news organization.
Okay. Okay. You've got a question. Your time's ticking.
Okay. Did you get any commitments from Vice President Pence or the White House to get this bill forward?
Good question. And yes, we met with Vice President Pence, and the quote that he gave me that the favorite thing that he said to me was, "I love the heartbeat bill." And he committed to make sure that the letter that we asked for the passage of the heartbeat bill, signed by more than 120 group leaders, that he said he would personally deliver that to the president. And we're told that that did in fact happen, and we're very grateful for it. And we'll be here available afterwards if some folks would like to talk to us. But we thank you for your patience, for your time, and for coming out today. So God bless you. Thanks so much.